Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurum Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaisnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagajatam Sagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Paritana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kupa Sindhu Bhivacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prashtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschata Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, everyone. So welcome to, now we're studying chapter 9 of Bhagavad Gita. So chapter 9 is entitled Most Confidential Knowledge. Anytime when someone says, I have a secret, we all race to hear, what is that secret? So Krishna is telling us now in this very beautiful chapter, and this 9th chapter is like the middle, the sweet essence of this Bhagavad Gita. And in the final verse, we'll get like the treasure of this Bhagavad Gita. So now in chapter 8, we learned that pure devotional service, it surpasses all other paths of self-realization. It includes the results of all other paths. And on top of that, it adds one thing. And that is residence in Krishna's eternal abode. So this process of devotional service, it is all inclusive. Within it, everything is included. Nothing else is left to do. Nothing is left behind. And then Krishna explained, well, what is so special about his eternal abode? And we talked about how it is eternal, not a shashvatam, temporary. There's no birth, no death, no old age, no disease. And unlike the material world, which is a place full of dukkha, it is dukkha alayam, a house of misery. So Krishna compared and contrasted the material world with the spiritual world and gave us the process of how to achieve it through ananya bhakti, devotional service, pure devotional service. Now, in chapter 9, we're going to get to this most confidential knowledge. Now, chapter 9, we'll see some very similar topics discussed from chapter 7. We'll see the importance of hearing. Remember, Krishna opened chapter 7 with, now hear from me. We'll see about how Krishna interacts with the material creation. So Krishna and his involvement in the material nature and that connection we'll talk about. Krishna will speak about the worship of the devatas versus bhakti. And he'll again give some analysis of what is better. And he'll also speak about this impersonalist versus devotee knowledge of Krishna. So we'll see some similar themes. But also in chapter 9, we're going to go deep into the potency of devotional service. Right? So, and when we get to confidential knowledge, we say most confidential knowledge. Krishna is revealing this, how to perform pure devotional service, this ananya bhakti. He referenced it in chapter 8, And now he's going to explain how to perform it and how he reciprocates with his devotees. So this chapter should solidify our faith in the process of bhakti and how he has said it is inclusive of everything else. And then on top of that, one more thing, enter into eternal abode. In this chapter, we're going to see how it is by far the best, most accessible, easiest, and effective process for us to do. And exactly how to do it. So this is the details. So when we say confidential, why is it confidential? Don't we want to tell everybody this? We want to broadcast this message of Krishna? So sometimes we wonder, but what is this supposed to not be spoken about? Well, it is confidential in the sense that not many know about it. Because this information, it only appeals to the devotees. Others who are envious of Krishna, they'll think that this is bogus, not fair. So this knowledge about Krishna and his pure devotion, it is only available to the devotees. And so, again, what is the confidential knowledge? So this confidential, most confidential, is that Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is the object of our worship. And we have this eternal relationship with Krishna as his eternal servant. And this process of Ananya Bhakti, it is what revives our dormant love for him. So the best knowledge is because it relieves our pains of material existence. We'll talk about this in verse 2. Right? So the 3 levels of confidential knowledge. We got some confidential knowledge in chapter 2 about the soul. Knowledge about the soul is helpful for understanding where I'm going ultimately. This was explained in chapter 2 and chapter 3. We'll see some more coming in chapter 13. But this is what the first level of confidential knowledge. Then in chapter 7 and 8, we began to learn how to attain Krishna. So in the first level, we don't know yet about Krishna. But now in the second level, we begin to learn to attain a little bit about Krishna. Right? So it's more confidential because not only knowing the soul, but we know something about the soul, its connection with Krishna, the absolute truth. So some understanding of Bhagavan. Right? We had knowledge of the absolute in chapter 7. Right? So this makes it more confidential. And what is most confidential? Most confidential is to know about pure devotional service, the activity of the soul. So not just the soul, but the activity of the soul. And to know Krishna's mystic opulences. So 2 things. The activity of the soul, to know about pure devotional service, and Krishna's mystic opulences. Because Krishna is going to say that one must be convinced of these opulences in order to come to pure devotional service. So they're very nicely connected. So to know the great results of pure devotional service is also part of this overall confidential knowledge. How the pure devotee is actually able to control Krishna with his love or her love. That is a very confidential aspect of devotional service. Right? To know about his eternal abode and his different pastimes, his rasa lila, and these different these are all the confidential topics within this most confidential. Okay? So the first 3 verses now, they're going to discuss the qualifications and disqualifications for hearing this most confidential knowledge. So Krishna is going to glorify this knowledge and then explain how one becomes qualified to hear it and what disqualifies one to hear it. Okay? So we'll read now verse 1. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "My dear Arjuna, because you are never envious of me, I shall impart to you this most confidential knowledge and realization, knowing which you shall be relieved relieved of the miseries of material existence." So we see 3 aspects to this verse: the qualification to hear, what the knowledge does, and the importance of hearing. So the main qualification to hear this knowledge is one must be free of envy of Krishna. Now we may think, I have no envy of Krishna. Well, that is good. That is great. But let us remember, we ended up in this material world because we had envy of Krishna. We said, why you? Why not me? So maybe we have some residual, small, lingering aspects of that. But we should work to become free of envy. Right? So why Krishna is only telling this to the non-envious? One might say, well, wait a minute. This would help the envious. This would help them become free of their envy. Right? So something secret that is so powerful, that has the power to control even Krishna, he doesn't give it to somebody who doesn't have good feelings about him. Right? Would you give somebody the power to control you, tie your hands, let's say, if you knew they were envious of you? No. But it goes even further than that. Krishna is not fearful of what somebody can do, of course, like we would be. But the envious, they cannot tolerate to hear Krishna speak about himself. They cannot tolerate the glories of Krishna. Right? It's painful to hear. Like, if we hear the glories of somebody else and we have envy of them, it pains us. And it is quite interesting. They're glorifying so-and-so, not insulting us, but what we feel? Pain. Because we have envy of that person. You know, we feel that they're criticizing me even though they're speaking nicely about them. Oh, this person makes such nice samosas. And what do we hear? You don't make nice samosas. Even though they're not even speaking to us. When that emotion is there, it is a sign of envy. So, when the envious hears about the glories of Krishna, they feel pain, they feel dissatisfaction. So Krishna doesn't want to give dissatisfaction to anybody, even the envious. So he keeps this knowledge confidential from them. He keeps it quiet. So not to not give them any discomfort. So this envious nature, it precludes us from hearing and understanding about Krishna. We cannot be envious of him. Because Krishna is going to speak about himself. A materialist may think this is boastful. But remember, Krishna is just trying to give Arjuna relief from suffering. Right? Just like a father may say to a son, trust me, listen to me, I know what is right for you. When a father says that, the son doesn't think that's ego or pride. He knows it's spoken out of love. So when Krishna is going to speak sometimes about himself in this chapter, or his glories, he's not trying to make himself feel that. He doesn't need the adoration or the acclaim or popularity vote. He is self-satisfied. But he is doing so out of love for us and Arjuna. Just as a father may, speak in this way to his child. So, but unless one is free of envy, this knowledge will be painful to hear, difficult. Right? So the second thing Krishna speaks about in this verse, that this knowledge, what does it do? It says, Arjuna, you shall be relieved from the miseries of material existence. How many of us want to be relieved from material miseries? All of us. So this is the key. This is the knowledge that will give us. It's very, very powerful information. How to transcend the modes of material nature. How to be situated in eternal bliss and happiness. How to attain the spiritual world. Think about it. Every single human, every single living entity on this planet is trying to find, eternal life, free from difficulties, no more old age, no more distress, no more anxiety. Everybody is looking for it. Endless amounts of energy is being spent to find it. And Krishna is giving it to us right here in chapter 9 of Bhagavad Gita. Don't have to go much further. How valuable this knowledge is. How much it would sell for on Amazon if you could say, with this knowledge you'll get eternal life of bliss and happiness. What value in material terms you could put on it? A lot. But this knowledge is the key. So this Krishna is glorifying what it will do. Right? Now, just to clarify again, just to remind, what is this knowledge that Krishna is going to speak on? Pure devotional service. This is the topic of this chapter, pure bhakti. Right? So, that most confidential piece. The third piece is the importance of hearing. Krishna makes the point that our advancement, it depends on hearing about Krishna. Hearing from the right source. Shravanam, as we know, is a very important process in devotional service. So we cannot understand this by our own analysis, by our own speculation. It's realized knowledge, meaning somebody must tell us. It's descending information. So Krishna, if we have desire, will give us the intelligence. Dadami buddhi yogam tam, he'll say in the next chapter. He says, I'll give you the intelligence to hear this. So what do we have to do? Just be sincere. When Krishna sees our sincerity, he'll give us the ability to hear this knowledge. So hearing is very important. And hearing in association of devotees is essential. Okay? Prabhupada says in the purport here, he says, discussion of Krishna is very potent. And if a fortunate person has such association and tries to assimilate the knowledge, then he will surely make advancement towards spiritual realization. Right? Nice statement by Srila Prabhupada. The discussion of Krishna is very potent and it is key to advancement. So our eagerness to hear, that is a measure of our advancement in bhakti. How eager am I to hear? If I am eager, then I know I'm making some progress in devotional service. So now let's hear about this knowledge, the king of all knowledge. Krishna says, this knowledge is the king of education, the most secret of all secrets. It is the purest knowledge. And because it gives direct perception of the self, it is the perfection of religion. It gives direct perception of the self by realization. It is the perfection of religion. It is everlasting, and it is joyfully performed. So Krishna is now glorifying this knowledge first. Before giving the knowledge, he's going to glorify it. And then in the next chapter, we're going to get the opulences of the Absolute. So before that, he is going to glorify why it is so important and relevant. What is his potency? Okay? So let's go through each of these terms now. The king of education. Right? What does the king of education mean? It means it is above the modes of material nature. Just knowing I am spirit soul, that is within the mode of goodness. But I need to know about the soul, about the soul's function, its source, its position, its eternal activity. Right? So this knowledge Krishna will speak is transcendental, even beyond knowing I am spirit soul. All the knowledge about matter, it is inferior because matter is inferior. As we heard in chapter 7, that is the apara shakti, the lower energy. So everything that we acquire knowledge about, science, math, English, history, all these different, everything that one learns in university, it all relates to matter. And thus it is temporary. And it doesn't provide any eternal result. It can only explain how to enjoy this body. Yet we are not this body. Right? So we know in this simple car and driver analogy, is it more important to know about the function of the car or the function of the driver? Obviously we'd say the driver. So similarly, this knowledge about the soul is the highest of knowledge. Knowledge of the body is helpful. It has a function, but in relative terms, it is of lower importance, lesser importance. So Prabhupada comments that even within spiritual knowledge, there is so much philosophy. The Vedas, the Puranas, different philosophers. Prabhupada quotes, the different philosophers like Gautama and Kanada and Kapila and Yagnavalkya. And so many different philosophers are there. So of all of that knowledge, even within the spiritual knowledge realm, this is the essence of all. It is the cream, the creme de la creme, the absolute best of all. So this king of education, how can you summarize it? If you say a king of knowledge, what is it? It's knowledge about the activities of the spiritual soul in the spiritual world. It is knowledge about the activities of the soul in the spiritual world. That is the summary of this king of education. So this is why it is Raja Vidya. Okay. Next, we're not going to go in order of how it's presented, but a little bit about how Order Srila Prabhupada also presented it. It says it's susukam. Means this knowledge brings about great joy. It is joyfully performed. When we engage our senses in service of Krishna, we get happiness. There's bliss. Actually, bliss where nothing is higher. You know, we know in the Ashtanga Yoga process, very arduous, difficult. One is to withdraw the senses. There's not the enjoyment, the pleasure of chanting and singing and dancing for the Lord. But this bhakti, this pure devotional service, it is very joyfully performed. So one of the great qualities of bhakti is very joyful. Avyayam. The result and the knowledge itself, it is everlasting. It is eternal. It doesn't fade. You know, it's always fully potent. You know, the news we get in the newspaper, the next day it's stale, it's old, nobody reads it. But this knowledge, it is always fresh. It is always the latest. It is always enlightening. It is eternally effective. It is everlasting. And this bhakti is just not the process to purify. It is the activity once one is purified as well. It is the means and the end. You know, for example, there are many mantras one may chant to elevate themselves. But once one is elevated, that mantra has no function because you've already elevated. Right? So that has no function. But bhakti is the process to elevate, but also the activity once purified, once elevated. And that's why it is everlasting. It is not a process effective today in our current circumstance. No, it is the eternal process. It is the process to purify, and it is the activity once one is purified, rendering pure devotional service. And thus, it is this all-in-one. Right? Then Prabhupada talks about it is easy to perform. Right? 3 reasons he gives for the easy to perform. 1, it's easy to hear about the beautiful pastimes of Krishna. So sweet. The qualities and nature of the Supreme Lord. Just by hearing, we can start in building our attraction. 2, we get to use our senses. We get to actually enjoy our senses. We get to taste nice things, hear nice things, speak nice things, smell nice things. We get to use and enjoy our senses. Thus, it makes it easy. And you don't need any qualification. Right? You don't need a certain level of intelligence, some wealth, be of a certain age, a certain race. No, it is universal. So this is what makes this bhakti process, Prabhupada talks about, easy. Now, we say, hey, sometimes it's difficult for us. Yes, we make it difficult upon us. But actually the process is right there. Then we see pavitram. Pavitram idam uttamam. It is the most purifying. Purify from what? Purify from the sinful reactions that are lying dormant in the heart. Prabhupada talks about, and quoting from the Puranas and what we see in Nectar of Devotion, that even the proclivity and the tendency to sin, this bijam and kutam, bhakti can pull out and cleanse that even nature to sin. Nothing else, no yajna, no prayaschita process can remove this tendency and nature to sin. But bhakti does. And thus, it is very purifying. Prabhupada says, therefore the purifying potency of devotional service is very strong. And it is called pavitram uttamam, the purest. And we know what is the root cause of our sins is ignorance, lack of knowledge. Ignorance of who is Krishna and who am I in my relationship. So this knowledge is going to rid this ignorance and thus purify. But it is the most purifying process. Nothing else can be as effective in cleansing the sins in the heart and the impurities in the heart than bhakti. Further glorification. Pratyaksha vagamam. This bhakti process is so perfect that one can directly perceive the results. We can feel the effect of bhakti tangibly. It is not that we have to do the process and hope in the future something good will happen. Take it on faith. No, there is an immediate perception, a feeling, an experience. Right? Because think about it. In this bhakti process, if we were chanting every day, but there was no positive experience, how difficult it would be to take to the process simply on the words of Shastra or the words of Guru. So Krishna is so kind that he gives immediate, tangible results to us that we can pratyaksha, with our own senses, perceive. It is the greatest blessing of Krishna. If I went to the gym and someone says it's good for you, but I saw no tangible results, it'd be very difficult. I'd have no faith, confidence to continue going. I need results. So Krishna knows that. And so the whole process of bhakti is so wonderful that in even the beginning stages, one begins to see and experience real tangible results. And that's what makes it so wonderful. And what is the ultimate result one experiences? Happiness, pleasure. As we experience bhakti, we practice bhakti, there is a happiness that inspires one to do more. And that's why we see devotees starting in devotional service. In time, they begin to give up all kinds of other activities. Why they give them up? Because they're getting more pleasure in devotional service and they're getting less pleasure in these other activities. Right? That higher taste we saw in chapter 2. And again, what is the key for this to be revealed? Association. By associating with devotees, we get the taste for hearing and chanting. Prabhupada gives the example of Narada Muni. We see what result he had just by associating and serving the great devotees. He became a pure sage with full understanding. Everything was revealed to him, and it will be revealed to us in the same way. Then we have Dharmyam. This is real religion, Prabhupada says, and the perfection of religion. Because this knowledge reveals how to please Krishna, of which there's nothing greater we can do. No greater activity one can do than learn how to please Krishna. Okay? So the knowledge to get liberation, to get the fruits of karma kanda sacrifices, to get jnana knowledge, all of that has limited results. But this knowledge gives us the ultimate goal, how to please Krishna, which gives us eternal happiness. That is the ultimate of all things one can provide, one can achieve. If you've never studied the Vedas, never went to Gurukul, still one can get the ultimate goal of all study, the perfection of all religion. This pure devotional service. So this knowledge, it is the perfection of religion. Right? Narada Muni, again, he achieved all of this without any study, just by seva and blessings, association. So it is the absolute perfection. So Prabhupada concludes this purport, it's a long purport, with a very nice statement. He says, when one's heart is cleared of all nonsense, then one can understand what God is. Thus the process of devotional service or Krishna consciousness is the king of all education and the king of all confidential knowledge. It is the purest of religion, and it can be executed joyfully without difficulty. Therefore, one should adopt it. A nice summary of this beautiful verse. So very, very powerful. Different aspects of this knowledge. So now, if it's so great, why doesn't everybody take to it? If it's the king of all things, why doesn't everybody take to it? Krishna says in the third verse, those who are not faithful in this devotional service cannot attain me, O conqueror of enemies. Therefore they return to the path of birth and death in this material world. So Krishna says one must have faith. Without faith, one cannot begin the process of devotional service. It is the first step in our march towards Krishna Prema, Shraddha. And what does faith mean? Full conviction that by serving Krishna, one can achieve all perfections of life. Krishna, Prabhupada uses that statement, we recall, in the verse about Vyavasayatmika Buddhi. Right? So conviction that by serving Krishna, one achieves all perfection. That is faith. And so we need faith in that Krishna is supreme and that I am his part and parcel. And my eternal position is to serve Krishna. And faith that this is the only way to acquire peace and happiness. The only way. To the extent I have faith in that, I can make progress. Until we develop faith in that statement that this is the only means for success, then we won't be able to render service unmotivatedly or constantly. Two aspects of pure devotional service, unmotivated and constantly. If I feel I need something else beyond this pleasure of bhakti, then I may even do bhakti, but I'll ask Krishna for something. Give me some wealth. Give me some freedom from distress. Give me something. Because I don't have faith that actually it is a service of Krishna that is everything. So I cannot be pure, unmotivated, unless I have this faith. I also cannot do it completely or constantly unless I have faith that this is the only thing to do. Because if I don't have faith as the only thing to do, I'll do some other activities as well. Yes, I'll do my bhakti, but then I'll also pursue this, that, and the other. Who's going to take care of me when I get old? I better, do some, activities to make sure I can, save for my future. So only when one has faith that this is the only means of happiness, then one can do it constantly, completely. So this faith is very important. Faith that this is the only means of happiness. It is required to be constant and unmotivated in devotional service. And so what is the measure of our faith? What is the measure of how much faith I have? How much other engagements have I given up? Right? How detached am I from all the material allurements? To the extent I am detaching from material allurements, I understand I have some faith in bhakti because I am now losing faith in all my material attachments. So it's very simple. If I've given up all my material attachments, it means I have full faith in Krishna. Krishna will protect me. He'll give me everything I need. And then Prabhupada says, well, where does this faith come from? Association with devotees. This is what helps build our faith. And Prabhupada says in the purport, development of faith is the process of Krishna consciousness. Performing bhakti brings about faith. Right? So, this process of bhakti, practicing devotional service, is what builds our faith. Just like swimming in a pool is what brings our faith in our ability to swim. By actually doing it, our faith builds. So by doing bhakti, our faith will increase. So if we have some small faith but not full, don't worry, just start. And our faith will grow. But otherwise, if not, one cannot take to devotional service, this pure devotional service. So now Krishna has glorified the knowledge, said what is the qualification to achieve it, and what prevents one from receiving it. And now he's going to reveal some knowledge about his opulences. Krishna is going to explain his relation to us within this material world. And it is achintya beda beda. It is inconceivable. We'll see simultaneously oneness and difference. We're going to see it. And the point here is that it's inconceivable by our limited minds. And it's inconceivable because what Krishna does is far beyond what we can see anyone else doing. It establishes the great superiority of Krishna, how much more powerful he is than any of us, because he is doing things that we have never seen anyone else do. And thus it establishes in our heart and with faith that Krishna is the supreme, because he can do things that nobody else can do. If Krishna was just like one of us, his potencies were just like one of us, one, they wouldn't be inconceivable because we could relate to him. If he could lift 100 pounds, we wouldn't think that's not inconceivable. I've seen somebody else lift 100 pounds. But when he lifts Govardhan, that's inconceivable to us because we haven't seen anybody else do it. But that doesn't make it myth. It makes it us understand we are insignificant compared to the potency of Krishna. Right? So now let's read some of these verses and see. By me, in my unmanifested form, this entire universe is pervaded. All beings are in me, but I am not in them. Now we hear, wait a minute. This is inconceivable. How is he simultaneously involved and not involved in the material world? It seems like a contradiction. The entire universe is Krishna's energy, his material energy. So he's present here and everywhere. But he says, I'm remaining independent, neutral. All beings are in me, but I am not in them. This is this achintya beda beda. It is seemingly contradictory. So what does this mean? The meaning of this statement is very important. That everything is in him, but also not in him. We are all in him in the sense that we are all within his material energy. He is non-different from his energy. We are within his inferior apara shakti. So in that sense, we are in him. But at the same time, while his energy is present and pervading everywhere, he has not lost his eternal form in Goloka Vrindavan. He is also far away, as we saw in Shirsh-Upanishad. He is near and far. So he is present in his complete aspect in the spiritual world. So he's not lost his personal presence. So in that sense, we are not in him because he is there. We are here. So simultaneously, we are within the energy of Krishna, but he is also separated in the spiritual world. So this simultaneously two different aspects. Again, inconceivable by our ability or limited minds. So he is the source of everything, but again, fully independent of it. And what happens here in the material world has no impact on him in the spiritual world. You know, like us, if I go on vacation, still I have to attend to things that are happening back home, either in the office or in the home. I have things to do. But Krishna is fully independent. So yes, this material affairs is happening under his jurisdiction, but he is fully independent, meaning whatever happens, it doesn't adjust or impact his consciousness in any way. So he doesn't directly associate with the material world. It happens independent of him, though it is only him doing it. So it's inconceivable. Okay? So while the great destruction of the universe may be taking place somewhere, Krishna is enjoying playing his flute. very peacefully, enjoying with the cowherd boys, the gopis, Mother Yashoda, Nandama. That's why he is the perfect leader, perfect manager. Everything happens under his control and jurisdiction, but he is fully aloof, separated. Prabhupada gives the example of the king. The king's tax collectors may go out into the district and collect taxes, but the king personally is not going. He may be enjoying in his palace, right? But the collectors represent the king's power as his agent. So in that way, Prabhupada says a crude example of how this works. One of Krishna's inconceivable potencies. So he'll continue this theme, explaining it again a different way. And yet everything that is created does not rest in me. Behold my mystic opulence. Although I am the maintainer of all living entities, and although I am although I am everywhere, I am not part of this cosmic manifestation. For myself is the very source of creation. Again, Krishna says, I'm the maintainer. He is everywhere, present everywhere. Yet he says, I am not part of this creation, but I am the source of creation. This is his yoga mayam, his mystic opulences. This part of the most confidential knowledge is to know his mystic opulences. The contradiction it seems in our heart is indicative of his greatness, of his opulence. When we understand his greatness, then it leads us to surrender to him with love. That is the conclusion of understanding these opulences. So he says here, he is present everywhere via his energy, but he is not personally affected by the work of maintenance. Prabhupada gives the example in the purport. Atlas is holding, the earth with big muscles and struggling. That is not how this works. Krishna is maintaining all the orbits of the planets, he says. But by no effort, just by his will. He is the source of creation, but he is not directly creating. Right? His expansions are carrying out the different activities of creation. So the key point is, how does Krishna do everything? Simply by his will. He doesn't have to physically do anything. His will and his actions are the same. They're non-different. Now imagine if we had this type of opulence. I could sit on my sofa, and by my will, all the work in the office would happen. How happy we would think. But by Krishna's will, simply, all this creation, maintenance, destruction, all these different things are happening. Doesn't have to do anything. We don't have that ability, but Krishna does. Thus, he possesses these opulences far beyond us. They're very mystical. How he can be involved completely, yet aloof. So Krishna is going to give us an analogy now to try to understand this. Understand that as the mighty wind blowing everywhere rests always in the sky, all created beings rest in me. So Krishna is giving an analogy to try to help us understand this. Rest on him, what does that mean? It means that everything is maintained by him. We are dependent on Krishna. We are fully dependent on him. We have no ability to exist independent of the arrangements of Krishna. So that's why everything rests in him. But we act independently. We have some limited independence to do what we want. So while we are fully dependent and maintained by Krishna, we have some, at the same time, some independence. And so that, how to understand that? Right? How can at the same time we be dependent and independent? So Krishna gives this analogy to explain the inconceivable nature of our relationship with Krishna. This explains our relationship with Krishna. So the wind, when it blows, it needs the sky in order to contain the movement of the air so that the effect of wind can be felt. If there was no sky, outer atmosphere, to contain the wind, the air moving would just continue on. There would be no effect being perceived. So the sky, while it is separate from the wind, detached, it restricts the movement of the air. And thus, that has that experience. So similarly, we have the ability to move and do some limited things, but we are still limited by this material world under the arrangement of Krishna. Right? So we are dependent on Krishna, but Krishna is detached. The sky is detached from the wind, but the wind is dependent on the sky. So in that same light. So we can understand that Krishna, again, he is the cause of everything. But he is not partial to our activities. Without Krishna, nothing works. Just like without the sky, there is no wind. But he is not doing. The sky is not creating the wind. Krishna is not creating our actions. We, through our desires, are creating actions. So this is how we are dependent and independent. Okay? Krishna is not the cause of our actions, but at the same time, he is the fully maintainer of all of us. So again, this is a little bit inconceivable. If this feels complicated, difficult to conceive, it should. It is inconceivable, but we're getting a glimpse of it. And the main thing to understand is how great and how powerful Krishna is. That contradiction again is there because we're applying our material experience to his potency. But because we have never seen anything like this, it makes it a little bit inconceivable. So we just take it as faith, take it on face value, because Krishna is saying it, coming from the perfect source in Guru Parampara. And the conclusion is, Krishna is the Supreme Lord, and I should surrender to him. You know? How we can be in Goloka Vrindavan and independent and not distracted by this giant process of creation? Difficult for us, you know. Our mind is racing with so many things. We cannot multitask, but that is what Krishna can do. He can do so many amazing things. So just surrender to the Lord. Okay, 7 and 8. We'll read these together. O son of Kunti, at the end of the millennium, all material manifestations enter into my nature. And at the beginning of another millennium, by my potency, I create them again. 8. The whole cosmic order is under me. Under my will, it is automatically manifested again and again. And under my will, it is annihilated at the end. So Krishna here is telling us, he is directing the creation and destruction. But all of it's happening automatically. How is he doing it, but it's done automatically? Again, another contradiction. It's not a contradiction, it's a seemingly contradiction. So Krishna gives the potency to the modes of nature and things are carried on. So he is doing it, but it's carried on automatically. It happens by the arrangement of Krishna. You know, just like the factory owner is dreaming of an automated factory. A factory you can just press a button and things are automatically happen. That is like the dream for us mortal humans. Not have to be involved in any of the activities of that factory and just sell the product and make money. But we can't do that. So many things have to be programmed and managed and administered for it to happen. But Krishna, he is the perfection of automation. He is the perfection of automation. Just simply by his will, things carry on. And not one moment of his consciousness is consumed by all these activities. He is simply there to enjoy with his devotees. Krishna's only activity is to enjoy with his devotees. And the only activity of his devotees is to enjoy with Krishna. So these are some of the opulences of Krishna that he is giving us. And he'll continue this discussion and why some people don't see these and begin to deride Krishna even, not understanding his greatness. And that's what we'll discuss next week. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda ki. Any comments or questions from today's discussion?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam, Srila Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna, Dandavat Pranams.
Prabhuji, can you please explain one more time the concept of this Achintya Beda?
Yeah, so Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Achintya means inconceivable. And we see these simultaneously, oneness and difference. Right? I am part of Krishna, so I have a similarness to Krishna, but I'm also different. I am one in quality, but very small in quantity. Right? So these are these kind of inconceivable potencies in aspects. And so that's what it means. And again, at the end of the day, the conclusion is for us to understand that Krishna has these powers and abilities that are very difficult for us to perceive in our material conditioned state because of the greatness of the Supreme Lord. But that's what this this Achintya Beda Tattva refers to, our simultaneously oneness and difference with Krishna. Okay? Hare
Prabhuji,
Krishna.
just one more doubt, Prabhuji.
Yes.
In 9.4,
Yes.
he says, all beings are in me, but I am not in them. So, but I know you explained, Prabhuji, that it's a contradiction, but how do we explain this to people when they ask us, like, how can Krishna say this when he's saying on the other side that I am seated in everybody's heart?
Yes. So the point is that he is seated factually in everybody's heart, but he's also situated in the spiritual world. So because Krishna is Purnam, he's complete, right? Even though so many things emanate from him, he remains complete. This Purnam eva vishishite. So he can simultaneously be present everywhere, but still present in the spiritual world. So like us, if I am present in my home, I cannot be present in your home. Right? Because I don't have that potent. So Krishna can be present through his inferior material energy everywhere. He can be present through his expansions and situated in our heart as Paramatma. And so he's within. But at the same time, he is enjoying with Mother Yashoda in the spiritual world. So he's not with us, but he's with us. Right? So that's how we understand it. It's the presence, the completeness of Krishna never being dissipated. If he is somewhere else, because he's unlimited. But because we are limited, it's difficult for us to perceive or conceive of this unlimited feature of Krishna. So I am in them. Yes, he is present everywhere, but I am not in them. He is present in the spiritual world, unaffected by that. So it's almost like simultaneously he has two. He actually has unlimited number of presences, but that's how we can explain them. And again, I want to make, because sometimes I missed, or it is a seemingly contradiction. It's not a contradiction. It's a seemingly contradiction. It appears to be a contradiction to us, but it is not. Is it okay, Prabhu?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hey, thank you. Any other comments or questions?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yes, Prabhu. Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Prabhu, you mentioned faith is connected to material things. Could you explain how is that connected to?
Well, we have to have faith in something. We live upon faith. You know, the materialists say, oh, these spiritualists, they're just whimsical. They just put their faith in something unreal. But the materialist also has faith. In every aspect of life, we live with faith. So the question is my faith in spiritual life or material life? The materialist has faith that when they put their money in the bank will be there tomorrow. They have faith. The materialist has faith that when they're flying in an airplane, that the laws of gravity will not change while they're in the airplane. The materialist has faith that the pilot knows how to fly. The materialist has faith that the home they've constructed won't fall on their head when they're trying to enjoy in their beautiful home. The materialist has faith that their boat will float on the water. I can go on, right? So every aspect of their life is full of faith. The devotee, every aspect of their life is full of faith. Faith in Krishna, faith in the process of bhakti, faith in the presence of the spiritual world, faith in the knowledge I am spirit soul. Right? So the only question is where I'm going to put my faith. And so as one begins to practice devotional service, one understands faith in the material world is leading to misery and suffering. But faith in Krishna and bhakti is resulting in great happiness and pleasure. So one's faith in Krishna increases as they practice devotional service. But faith is present for everybody. But again, the materialists will claim, oh, I don't operate on faith. I operate on facts. Nonsense.
Thank you for Hare Krishna.
Is it okay? Thank you, Ruth. Dandava pranams.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Dhanva Pranam, all glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna Mataji, Dandava pranams. Yes.
Yes, Prabhuji, thank you for a wonderful class. I have a couple of questions.
Yes.
First one being, you mentioned when we were talking about the verse 9.3, you talked about the faith, and you said the measure of faith is how detached one gets from the material allurements. So that is, I understood. Then you said that obviously faith comes from association of the devotees. But at the same time, when we talked about pure devotional service, you said it is basically a service which we do unmotivatedly and constantly. Now, when we talk about unmotivatedly, this is where I'm kind of getting confused, because when we do devotional service and that faith we get, it actually gets more and more reinforced with the association, right? So, and it is the association which is a source of our motivation and encouragement too. It's a source of our inspiration too. So, we are talking about doing a pure devotional service unmotivatedly. So that means, then how come association also we are talking about then? And what is the role of association then?
Yeah, so unmotivated means no personal motives in performing devotional service, not enthusiasm. So one is enthusiastic to please Krishna. One is motivated to please Krishna. One aspires to work as best they can for the pleasure of Krishna. But one doesn't have a personal motive, no desire for their personal gain. So when we speak of unmotivated, it means with respect to personal desires, right? That's the anyabhilashita shunya. No personal desires. So association is what inspires one to understand how one can work unmotivatedly, right? When you first hear that, that doesn't seem right. How that can work? Well, hearing from a pure devotee who has experienced and understood the potency of unmotivated devotional service will then inspire us that, yes, this is actually the means to your perfection of life. So, the unmotivated doesn't mean unenthusiastically. It means no personal motives. And that ability to work without any personal motives, it only can happen when we have faith. And that faith is built by the association of devotees who have that faith. Just like if, Prabhupada gives the example, how he says, the disciple asks, how I can become sincere in devotional life. Well, he said, if you want to be a drunkard, associate with drunkards. If you want to be a devotee, associate with devotees. Right? So whatever we are trying to build our faith in, we associate with those like-minded people of that faith. So if I don't have faith yet that pure devotional service is the means of perfection, but I know I should do that, then associate more and more with those who have that faith. So that's the point Prabhupada's making in these purports about this association. So is that, I'm not sure if I answered the question, Mother.
Yeah, no, you did actually. I did not consider that in terms of unmotivation, as you said, is not your own personal agenda there.
Yes.
It's not just selfish motive for some other reason. So motivation as inspiration to do more service is fine. So that's what I was thinking as well. And another question was, I'm a little confused about the sky and the wind. I'm just going to explain what I understood in 2 sentences, Prabhuji. I'm not taking much time. Please tell me where I'm going wrong, if you don't mind.
Yes.
So basically, you said Krishna is like basically the cause of everything. So Krishna here we are associating with the sky. So basically, without sky, there cannot be any wind, and that wind is actually the desire of the living entities, right? So that is so the desire of those living entities, it is being supported. It will not be experienced till there is sky. I don't know, I'm not getting understanding.
So first of all, this analogy is a little bit complicated, but let's understand the broad context of it. So, as you very nicely said, the wind is dependent on the presence of sky for the wind to exist, for the effect of wind to be there. It's dependent on the presence of sky. But the sky is detached from the wind. It doesn't have anything to do with the wind. It's simply there to allow the wind to perform its activity of moving air. Similarly, so the parallel is, Krishna is there fully providing all of the different facilities and arrangements for us to exist. So we, as a living entity, are fully dependent on Krishna. But Krishna is not the cause of our actions. We do our activities based on our desires, but that activity is dependent on the provisions of Krishna. So Krishna doesn't interfere with our choosing the different activities. Just as the sky doesn't create the wind, Krishna is not creating our different activities. We, by our desires, are creating them. But, again, all of that is being under the dependence of Krishna. So we simultaneously have independence, choose what I want to do, but we are fully dependent on Krishna. So the dependent on Krishna doesn't make Krishna the doer. It kind of takes us back to that chapter 5 and chapter 3. We're still the doer. So that's the general understanding of this. It's a complicated topic. Is that okay?
Yeah, I think so. If I have more questions, I will ask later.
No problem.
I'll ask you later. Yeah,
No problem.
Thank you.
Just let it simmer a little bit, let it sink in, and don't worry about perfecting our knowledge specifically on this one. I'll leave it there. It's a little bit difficult.
Yeah, that's why it's inconceivable, because it's hard for us to understand this concept.
When the analogy is difficult, the analogy is meant to make the inconceivable accessible, then we know it's very inconceivable, right? So we kind of take it at that. So, okay, any other? Yes, Roji.
Many times we hear this, people say, this is Krishna's plan, but because it's been used many times, and how could they even say that when they don't know what is Krishna's plan?
Who is they when you're referring to? Just so I have some context, is it a devotee or a non-devotee, or what? Like when who says it's Krishna's plan?
Devotees, like many times when we speak with devotees, it's been a very casual language that we hear that, okay, so this is Krishna's plan, and sometimes it questions me that how come he knows even what is Krishna's plan, what Krishna's plans on that. So
Yeah, got it. So the devotee doesn't know Krishna's plan, because Krishna's plan is also inconceivable. But the devotee knows they are under the jurisdiction of Krishna's plan. Whatever it is, it is. Just like a child, when the child goes on, let's say, vacation with the parents, parents have created an elaborate plan. They may not know the details of the plan, but they know I am under the plan of my parents. The next 7 days, I am under their plan. I may not know all the intricacies of what the plan is, what is going to unfold on day 2, day 3, day 4, where we're going to stay, I may not know all those, but I know I'm under their plan. So similarly, devotee has faith that ultimately Krishna's plan reigns supreme. But it doesn't mean they know what Krishna's plan is. So when there is some setback in their life, they understand, okay, this is Krishna's plan. And he'll reveal to me ultimately why this is a great blessing to me. But I'll accept it as a blessing and try to search for it. Just in an example of a setback. And an example of something great happening. Okay, this is not me doing it. This is Krishna's arrangement, Krishna's blessing, Krishna's plan. He must have some reason for this. And surely, I have faith, he'll reveal it to me. So, the devotee knows they're under Krishna's plan, but they don't know what is Krishna's plan always. They know the end goal. That Krishna's plan for me, because I'm desiring to serve him, is to be eternally engaged in his devotional service. I know that's the goal of Krishna's plan. Now, how he's going to get me there, I don't know. But I have faith that whatever his plan is for me to bring me back home to him, it's better than whatever plan I could concoct, whatever plan I could come up with. So I'm grateful to be under Krishna's perfect plan and not my own. Because my own plan brought me here in the first place. So that is how the devotee operates, with full faith that Krishna has a perfect plan for us, because I am fixed in desire that I just want to serve Krishna. And then whatever happens, I know, okay, this is by his arrangement. Does that clarify, Prabhu?
yeah, Prabhu, like sometimes it questions the material intelligence that we have when we take some decisions as part of our life. Our material intelligence is going, it goes wrong. So then, is it good to say this is also Krishna's plan? If it's a mistake which is done by me, and supporting that situation with bringing the Krishna's plan, whether it's right to say is kind of something that goes.
Yeah. So you can actually, and that's actually what is very liberating. But we have to be careful that we have to understand that Krishna's plan isn't for us to be lazy. So we cannot think and say that, okay, this is all under Krishna's plan, so he'll do whatever he wants. No, Krishna's plan is for us to utilize all of our abilities, all of our intelligence, all of our capabilities to the best of our ability in the service of Krishna. And that's what he's keep telling Arjuna. Arjuna's function is to be an instrument of Krishna's plan. Krishna has the plan, but he still wants Arjuna to fight very enthusiastically to do the best he can, because he wants Arjuna to get the credit for this battle. So we have to put forth our absolute best effort with the best of our intelligence, best of our ability, understanding I am an insignificant player in Krishna's plan. But still, I have to do what I can do best. And if it works, that is Krishna's blessing. If it doesn't work, that's also Krishna's blessing. So now we can become independent. But we can't use that it's Krishna's plan to suggest, well, then I don't do anything. Or I can be lazy. I can do my job halfway, half-heartedly. Right? We can't use that because now we're not performing under Krishna's desire. Krishna's desire wants us to do the best of our ability, but leave the outcomes to Krishna. So in, I don't say material world, I say in the spiritual life, in the office, because work is also spiritual life. If I'm doing something and a colossal mistake happens, okay, I did my best. I tried my best. I'll try better next time. But Krishna also must have some better plan. So one, doesn't become stressed out or attached to that failure also. The beauty is you can detach from both the success and the failure. But typically what we do, we attach to the success and try to hand off the failures. When it fails, Krishna, that's your fault. When it's success, I did it. If we're consistent in Krishna's plan is reigning supreme, I'm always putting my best efforts, then actually we can become equipoised in that. We don't have those ups and downs. But we still put forth effort to the best of our ability. Because Krishna has given me something, I'm not going to waste it. I'm going to use it as best I can in his service. Does that make sense, Prabhu?
Yeah, Prabhu. Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna, because it comes every other time. But I think you nicely explained it.
Yeah, no, it's an important topic. Thank you. Danda pranams. Anything else?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Danda pranam, Prabhuji. Very nice class as usual, Prabhuji. Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna, Dhanavats. Thank you.
Prabhuji, how do we understand the personal motivation, Prabhuji? Like, could you please give us the example, like, what is personal motivation? What is personal motivation? In devotional service also,
Yeah.
What is the personal motivation?
Yeah, so personal motivation can be, I have something to gain from my service. I do my service so that I'll gain the respect of others. I do my service so that I'll get nice prasadam because they're giving out gulab jamans to whoever does nice service. I'm just making some, small ones and big ones. I want to become initiated in this Guru Parampara so that now people will respect me. I do this devotional service so that I won't have any difficulties in my life. I do this bhakti so that my children will be protected. Those are all personal motivations, different degrees of motivation, right?
Yep.
But for the devotee, the pure devotee, is I do my devotional service to please Krishna. And the devotee has faith that when one does that, all those other desires are going to manifest according to what's best for me because Krishna cares and loves me so much. So the devotee doesn't even have to express their motivations. They know Krishna will take care of me. Krishna has my interest at heart. So when I water the root of the tree, all the different branches of desires are going to be fulfilled anyways. So the devotee doesn't have any motivations beyond seeing Krishna happy. So,
Yeah.
You have a follow-up to that, Prabhu?
Yeah, Prabhuji. Yeah, but we start the spirituality with the same motivation, right, Prabhuji? Aham Tvam Sarva Papebhyo. We hear that, and also we start this process in the mood of getting relief from this stress and get Krishna Bhakti, Krishna Prema. But still the desire is there, like, okay, whenever the difficulty comes to mind and all, you pray Krishna, okay. Is it wrong to pray, Prabhuji, for when we go to the distress and all? And how to pray, Prabhu? How to pray to Krishna in the right mood?
Yeah, it is definitely not wrong to pray to Krishna when you're in distress. We should pray to Krishna when we're in distress. But as you asked very intelligently, what to pray? That is the key. Not necessarily remove this distress from me. Instead, to pray to Krishna, Krishna, keep me in your service during this time of distress. Please allow me to serve you. Don't let my weakness of mind become disturbed by this distress. Please give me the strength to serve you, to please you. Right? So that's the mood the devotee has. Prabhupada wasn't praying, give me this temple, or give me this many disciples, no, it's simply saying, if you want this, then make it happen. If you so desire, give us this land so we can build you a nice temple. Right? So the devotee, when they encounter distress, their desire is not what is the cause of what is the negative aspect of distress? It inhibits my ability to serve. When my body breaks, I can't serve you, Krishna. So if I'm praying, Krishna, please relieve me of this so I can serve you more. Okay. Your point you made in the beginning of your statement is also very important. That in the beginning we talk about, to become free from birth, death, old age, and disease, to go back to Vaikuntha, do devotional service. Right? So that's clearly motivated devotional service.
Yeah.
But that is the preliminary stage. Right? The beginning stage. And that's why Rupa Goswami says bhukti and mukti. You can begin the process towards pure devotional service with bhukti, with material desires. But by knowledge, because if I say to you that you should only work for Krishna, and that's the first time you heard that won't appeal. I don't know Krishna yet. I don't know what the glories of working for Krishna is yet. Right? So it's a progressive stage towards perfect devotional service. But Krishna doesn't say, hey, you have to be perfect in order to start. And he'll tell us this later in this chapter. So we can start with some desires, but we should understand actually the more potent aspect of devotional service comes when we become free from desires. But not all desires, meaning free from material desires, personal desires. But a devotee is full of desires. They want to please Krishna. So when we pray to the Lord, we pray for the things that can keep us in His service. If I had to summarize what to pray for, that is what we should pray for. And always add the words, if you so desire. Krishna, if you so desire, please give me the strength to do so and so. Krishna, if you so desire. That's how Prabhupada taught us. He taught us this very important phrase to add. It shows our humility and it reminds us Krishna's plan is supreme. So whatever we pray, always add, if you so desire. If you do that, it makes the prayer nice. And how to pray, one final comment, that is where Srimad Bhagavatam comes into play. Srimad Bhagavatam is full of beautiful prayers. Great, great personalities are praying and offering glories to Krishna. We learn what is their mood of prayer. And from there we can try to develop that similar ability. Is it okay, Prabhu? You have a follow-up to that?
Amazing, Prabhuji. Thank you very much. I think it's beautiful, beautiful answer. Dandavat Pranam. Hare Krishna.
Dandavats.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Prabhu, just a follow up on that, on the Krishna's plan that you explained nicely. How to understand then? Is it because of my past karma I'm facing this difficulty, or that's also Krishna's plan?
Yeah.
How to distinguish?
So the recipient, the person feels, yes, I have done so much bad karma, but Krishna is minimizing my suffering because he is so kind to me and helping me remember that I should be careful and continue to render devotional service. So that is the mood of the devotee. That yes, when he faces some difficulty, that it is due to my past actions only. But Krishna is even minimizing it because he is so much. I deserve so much more, but he's giving me just a little bit. That is the perspective the devotee has. Okay?
Okay, Prabhu. Okay.
Anything else today? Okay, so if not, thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda ki jai. Hare Krishna, everyone.